Listen, God is so intentional. So I told you I'm reading through Leviticus, right? And I'm just noticing stuff. By the way, I have a shoot to go to, so I'm about to do my makeup. So in Leviticus chapter 3, okay? So they're talking about the fellowship offerings. Or no, sorry, the grain offering. And mind you, he has given them very specific instructions. So at the end of the chapter, right? This is chapter 2. He says, every grain offering you bring to the Lord must be made without yeast. For you are not to burn any yeast or honey in the food offering presented to the Lord. So I'm like, that sounds familiar. Let's go to Matthew 16. So Jesus says, be careful, be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Then they understood that he was not telling them to guard against the yeast used in bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So in the New Testament, the yeast represents the teaching of the Pharisees. And the yeast spreads very quickly. Just a little bit, you just need a little bit of yeast. And it makes the whole thing rise, right? But you know what he does want them to use? Salt. Yeah. Season all your grain offerings with salt. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings, and add salt to all your offerings. He said it so many times. In Matthew chapter 5, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. He doesn't want them to use yeast. He wants them to use salt. Why? Yeast spreads false teaching, false doctrine, false way of thinking. Salt preserves the truth. And then just to give a little bit more of like understanding of the Pharisees, in Matthew chapter 23, then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. And this is way too light, bro. Baby, am I eat down? But at the end of the day, a lot of us have lost our saltiness because we are not preserving God's truth. We are mixing in yeast with truth, and it spreads. Jesus told us to be the salt of the world. We are the standard. Like, Jesus was the standard, but we are trying to live up to his standard, and the world we shouldn't look like the